started the magazine. We've had several political discussions, community discussions.
Absolutely.
I really wanted to bring Spencer here today to kind of show you all just what's going on in Athens. Recently just got out of session, maybe about like a month ago. So I want Spencer to kind of walk you guys through what he does, the things that he sees going on in Athens from a bird's eye view and where he sees Athens going. And yeah, so thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's a
No
pleasure to
problem.
be here. It's good to see you back in town.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah,
Feels
it's a
good.
good place.
Good place to be home.
It is. It is a good place.
So you I kind of want to start, basically how you got to Athens, and I think we can kind of catch up from there. But tell everybody how did you end up here?
I moved around a lot when I was little, and only had a short period of time when I was younger that I was stable. Ended up going to 4 different schools from 7th through 12th grade, but prior to that had lived in like 5 different places by the time I was 7 years old. So I really didn't have. My family has a base in Mississippi where we've been there for a very, very long time, but I didn't have any real roots, and came to Georgia when I was 15 years old, was uprooted. And that was tough because that was my most stable time. I was leaving my stable time, right? And interestingly, everybody in Mississippi was like, "Oh, you're gonna move to Georgia? You're gonna be such a redneck." And then when I got here, everybody was like, "Wow, that's sort of weird. How come you're not such a redneck? You're from Mississippi, whatever." And so when I was 15, I went to school. I went to a different school when I was 16. Graduated from there, and didn't know what I was doing. One of my buddies called me up and said, "Hey, man, so-and-so and so-and-so are up here in Athens. All the cool people we know came to Athens. What are you going to do when you graduate?" And I said, I guess I'm coming to Athens. So I really didn't apply anywhere. And, back then UGA would let in anybody. They really would. And that's how I got in. I say that not to demean my admission to UGA, but to point out that it's a hard school to get into now, and these young people today are making my degree look very good, right?
Right.
So I came to Athens, and after 2 years of going to school straight, it was on the quarter system, right? So I had 7 quarters straight. I went through over the summer, and I called my dad and said, "Dad, I'm going to sell everything I have and move to California." And my dad said, "Son, you don't have anything." So, that was when I was 20. About a week later, now my dad is an evangelical Presbyterian preacher. Pretty conservative guy. He's not with us anymore, but you got to figure that guy, there was no internet. And he called me back about 4 days later and said, "Hey, I found an opportunity for you. You've lived in Haiti before. I did some mission work there when I was 13. And I spoke French." And he said, "There's a job opening down in Haiti. Maybe this will be something you're interested in." And I never got a chance to ask him, like, why did you want me to go to a third world country with a dictator rather than California? Maybe because he thought I would come back,
Right.
and never come back from California. I don't know. I never asked him. But I went. And I say that was one of the best years of my life. And I made $100 a month. I had lunch prepared for me during the week and on Sunday. And then the rest of it was on me. And it was an amazing year. I learned how to speak Creole. I'm capable de parler un peu Creole. I can still speak a little Creole. I dreamed in Creole. I really immersed myself into the culture. And coming back to Athens after that experience, I was going to stay, but I caught malaria and typhoid fever.
Oh, wow.
I can't give blood to this day because I'm potentially could be a transmitter of typhoid.
Wow. Okay.
But and not in person, by the way.
Yeah.
So no, you don't have to be afraid of hanging around me.
Right.
but it is one of those things that I had lost a ton of weight. I was gaunt. It's like in the movies, when
Yeah.
I couldn't, I was hallucinating. They put me in a bathtub, and the maids went out into the yard, and they crumpled up. They picked these leaves and they crumpled them up, and I was in the bathtub in my shorts, and then they came in a cold bath, and they broke the leaves and rubbed them on my shoulders and stuff, and then they made me drink this tea that was like oil, like the
Right.
viscosity of oil,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And all these old African remedies
Right.
is what they were,
And that's, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's funny, like in American culture, a lot of those remedies are viewed as like, negative things, but it's like a lot of these things actually have cultural healing, ancestral healing.
oh, 100%.
That we probably don't even up here. We would try to stay away from it, but
That's
it's like
right.
out there. That's really the what they've been doing for centuries.
That's all you got, and there's a reason. And I always say, I'm glad you brought that up. Look, all those old wives' tales. I mean, there's a reason for those, and they're not old wives' tales. I would say they're old wise tales.
Exactly.
Because, those phrases that your grandma says, if you think about it, every single one of them is daggum true.
Right on the money.
So, but I came back to Athens, and I really had a reverse culture shock because I had been living with people that lived in huts, mud huts. I lived in a cinder block room, smaller than a lot of people's walk-in closets, with no screens.
Right.
I had a mosquito net over my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I had to fish for my own food.
Just definitely going back to survival, and it makes you kind of appreciate what you have here too.
Yeah, but you know what? That was so much fun, and I really feel like our world has gotten so complicated.
Yeah.
Of course, back then it wasn't as complicated either. I was 20. That was a good 35 years ago. So, but it is a life-changing experience when you realize that we have a really good thing going here in this country, and we don't understand it fully until you have lived in different cultures and different countries. You can come back to this country and say, oh, I get it. I get why people want to come here.
Right.
We have trade deficits. Why do we have trade deficits? Because we got a lot of money. We got more money than anybody in the world. Trade deficits are a result of us buying. That's a buying power thing, not a problem thing.
Right. Right.
It's just like all that stuff, but you don't really get it unless you live it.
Right.
And that was an important part of my life. I came back. I started a couple of companies. I was exporting medical supplies in the Middle East. I had an environmental company that I started in the 90s, and really some of my value system's kind of slipping. So I got out of the private sector and I sold my environmental company to my partners, and I was kind of trying to find my direction. What am I going to do? But I need to do something that it wouldn't tear down my values. I was in my late 20s. I had some money, and luckily I recognized that I wasn't doing things that my faith had taught me to do. So I abruptly stopped all that, and my girlfriend at the time, who I'm married to, said, hey, Habitat asked me to ask you, would you like to be the first construction manager that they've ever hired? We had 2 employees back then. It was a tiny little thing. They built like a house every other year. And I call that my Jonah moment, in the idea that Jonah was called to Nineveh.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I felt it was a calling because 2 ladies that I'm not related to helped me buy my first house that I still live in right now. It's my largest asset, as it is with most Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that this was the time that I was being called to do work in my own backyard. And that's the way I said it. I went to the interview. I said, hey, look, I'll do this for 1 year. I've been in Haiti for a year. I had to come back. Okay, I knew it. That was my formula.
Right.
I'll do 1 year's worth of good work
Mm-hmm.
in my own community.
Yep.
I said, but, I've got bigger and better things that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But I'll commit to a year. And here I am 26 years later.
Right.
This is my 26th year. That was in 1999. And I say, little did I realize that this was the bigger and better thing that I was supposed to do. And through a lot of hard work, amazing staff, amazing board members, we have raised up home ownership in this town. We've given opportunities to people who want to take the opportunity to purchase a home where they live in a community where they can't afford the dirt. That's
I was
it.
about to say,
My
yeah.
customers are exactly the same. They
Mhm.
work hard. They make good decisions. They just don't make enough money to afford the dirt.
Right.
And these days, I couldn't buy the house I live in now.
Right.
There's no way, you know?
Mhm.
So it has been an amazing blessing to be able to do these things and to use my abilities for good.
Right.
And it's not self-serving. It really is a thing where this is what I've dedicated my life to. Is I feel like I have been so blessed and passing along the blessings, whether it's because of my skin color, the time I was born.
Right.
I mean, I'm a white Southern man
Yeah.
born in 67. What's my problem, right?
Right.
And I ain't got any. That's the bottom line.
Right.
And so,
I want to interrupt real
yeah.
quick. There's a saying, one of those old sayings too, is like tend to your land, and
That's right.
that's a part of, when I went to Atlanta, it was a case of, like, kind of similar to Haiti. I went out and I got my experience. I got to see things. I got to try and learn different things. But there was a calling and a purpose of, come home and be of service and
That's
try
right.
to try to do more from a place that is genuine, and I think I did have in my mind, well, because a lot of, once again, like, my peers are like, oh, well, New York or these are the fun places, and for some reason God kept saying, like, you have to tend to your own land, and when you do that, when you trust him on that, even you boxed it into a year. God said, no, the box is bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
It's 26,
It's no
so
box, really.
well,
It's like what I
exactly,
tell.
exactly. And that's, it's just relevant,
Yeah,
to
no, I mean, it's extremely important that you listen to what your faith tells you to do. And I think that Christian, Muslim, Jewish, I mean, whatever you want to be, the bottom line is that I live my life like I feel like my parents taught me to live my life. And they taught me respect, honor, hard work, taking care of those who need help, and doing the right thing, making the right decisions. I just think that, and I haven't always been that way, but it is something that we need to listen to,
right.
And then that's kind of why I ran for office too. Is like I don't want to run for higher office. I don't have any misperceptions about my own glory. What I want is to be able to help people. And when I ran for this particular office, it expands my ability to have a voice, expands my voice for those people in this community that don't necessarily have a voice, have the time to deal with stuff. And it's been a joy. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to serve in the legislature. And I just feel so lucky.
Right. Yeah, it was funny. My mom and I were riding the other day and saw another car. It had all the Democratic, candidates all the way back to Obama, coming up, Hillary, and Harris Waltz. And my point to her was, why aren't there no local Democrats on there?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's my thing, is that, yes, we have the upper echelon of politicians, but the people that I run into a lot are people that are at the Capitol, people like you, people like Houston, and it's to say, the local level is really where a lot of the voices bring up the demand or see a lot of the things that are changing. How the landscape is changing. They see it a lot sooner than that. So to lead into that conversation, because I know Kemp just vetoed a couple of bills, but I want you to talk about the last session, or first tell me what is a House of Representative? What is your role and function in the state government?
Okay. So I represent the district in Athens, 122, in the Georgia General Assembly. Our government is set up similar to our federal government in the idea you have a House, you have a Senate, you have a governor, we have a lieutenant governor who's kind of like the vice president, but they don't run together, right, as a package like ours do on a federal level. So it's a very similar government, and you can see that was derived from Georgia being one of the original 13 colonies. You know, it makes it obvious the way it worked out. So I serve in the House. There's 180 members in the House. Our session is constitutionally directed to be the second Monday of every other January. No, sorry. The second Monday of every January.
Okay.
We are elected every other year, just like our House members are on a federal level. One difference is our senators are also elected every other year. I serve as the vice chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, and that's one of 7 leadership positions for the House Democrats. And so I'm on the executive team that makes decisions on our policy, on our strategies, on a number of things on how we want to make the lives of Georgians better. So,
right. What was your first election like, as far as that, just getting it started and getting it off the ground, getting people to want to support what you were trying to do for them?
So first elections, you know, I ran 2 elections that year. I had a primary, which I won, and then I had a general, which I also won. And, you know, getting started, I would tell you this to any prospective candidates out there: you got to believe what you're doing. If you don't believe what you're doing down to the depth of your soul, you can't do the work that you need to do to get to this point. And then you have to sustain that, because every other year we're up for re-election, and it's not an easy job.
It's a battle,
you know, and you really have to believe what you're doing is the right thing. And if you're going to decide to run for office, you need to consider the fact that you're going to be entering into a 24-hour-a-day job. It's 24 hours a day.
Wow. Do you get paid? Is that part of?
We get paid a tiny little amount. The Georgia legislature is considered a part-time legislature, but actually it's technically,
you said it,
even considered not a part-time legislature, because there are part-time legislators in other states, and there's full-time in other states.
Okay.
We're considered a little less than part-time, but the reality is it's just 24/7, you know, and
you have to be passionate about it.
You have to be. It's about the work. It's not about any sort of money. And you know, I have spent a lot of my own personal money. We have limited budget. We don't even hardly have office budgets to run even our state office. Even that's reimbursable. And we have one office manager for 8 legislators.
Damn. It's probably a heavy payload.
It's a one-man show.
Yeah.
You know, so what you see is what you get.
Same here. Yep. Gotta take what you can get. What do you feel like some of the bigger pieces of like legislation that you worked on in your time being in office?
Oh, no, that's interesting. So I've worked on some pretty large pieces of legislation.
I guess like read off like your top few favorites.
Well, the one that has made the most impact on me was when I realized the depth in which this work actually was life and death. Okay? And this is part of the job that people don't really discuss, but what we do is about life and death. And I'm not talking about like everything immediately affects life or death, but here was one. I was asked to co-sponsor a bill that was sponsored by a Republican that changed the way that if a individual that was a victim of domestic violence wanted to, they could change their name in a sealed court record without running a public notice. And I thought, why not? That makes perfect sense. There's no point in changing your name if it's a public name change if you're trying to hide from an abuser, right?
Right.
I said, absolutely. This is good policy. So I signed on to that bill. Barely have to work it because it was good policy. There wouldn't, I believe it could have been 100% of the vote. I don't know without looking at the record. And then it got signed into law. And I was like, okay, cool. And then that summer, after that session was over in March, I got a call from, I didn't know the number. And the lady said, Representative Frye? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, I just want to let you know, thank you for passing that House bill. It's because of the passage of that bill that I'm alive today to make this phone call. That hit me.
Right.
I was like, whoa. You know, that came out of nowhere.
Somebody just thank you that they can live now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you know, ma'am, there was 5 other people on that bill. So, you know, I was just one of a team that did it. She said, well, I believe I'm more aligned with your values, and said, that's why I called you.
Right.
I go, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's those things that really make you understand, like, what we do is about life and death. It may seem we're being partisan. It may seem all this yang going back and forth and stuff. But the reality is, you're right, what you said earlier. The state elections and your local elections are the most important races of every individual's life. Because on the state level, once a year, we get together and we will change your life one way or another. It could be your finances. It could be your health care. It could be anything. And you're like, well, I don't get paid by the state and I don't have state health care. But no. We have a lot of purveyance over every aspect of your life at the state level. So you got to come out for your state elections. But then even on a smaller scale, your local elections are extremely important.
Right.
Because your local commissioners can tell you how tall your grass has to be.
Right.
They
Or your Board of Education members can tell you.
Your Board of Education members can
what your quality of education is.
That's exactly right. And these elections are the ones that literally, the Mayor and Commission of Athens, Clark County, and the Board of Commissioners meets every month.
Yep.
And every month they decide changes to you or your children's life.
Yep. Just watching the budget meeting they had last night.
And they're the lowest turnout elections we have.
Yep. Yep. And it's crazy, you know, to think just what the power there is in that people don't see.
That's right. Like you said about the bumper stickers, man. Everybody wants to watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But it's not the Super Bowl where the work is. That's the glamour.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
The work is getting to the Super Bowl.
Yep,
And that's
in
what
the
you
season.
consider your school board, mayor and commission, state race, and then your federal stuff. So that's one thing I'd love to stress. Y'all go out and vote, man. Vote in every election.
Right.
Because it does matter.
We'll definitely have a lot of discussion coming up on that too. What things do you feel going into this session that you just recently closed out on? If you were to summarize it real quick, what do you feel like they're doing up there that you kind of can stamp on it or say like I was a part of this? Or anything that you saw that you were like, I don't like that. I'm not a part of that.
So this session, I'm going to say like, I think it can be summed up in the very first bills that each party filed. The very first bill that the Republicans filed was some bill that had something to do with transgender something or other. I don't even know which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
The very first bill the Democrats filed was a bill that required safe storage of firearms in your residences.
Mm-hmm. Secure.
Safe. It's safe gun storage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, duh.
Yeah. We just had the worst, was it the second worst school shooting in Georgia, or was it the worst school shooting?
It might have been the worst. I don't know. But the one in Appalachia last year, a couple years ago, can't remember.
He took didn't he take his dad's gun? And
he literally took his father's gun.
And his dad actually knew part of it, you know, so it's like, yeah.
It's just a mess. And so, you know, like the fact that over time the NRA has been able to make it seem like a Second Amendment attack because we call for safe gun storage. And, right now, Georgia has open carry. So you could walk out of this house, walk down the street with an AR on your back, with an AR-15, and nobody can say a word, okay? If you're not breaking the law, the cops can come to you. They can't say a word. They can't even ask you if you have a license to carry in state law. What? That's the right way to conduct yourself around firearms and the wrong way to conduct yourself around firearms.
Right.
Because the right way means nobody gets hurt.
Right. Saving more
wrong
lives.
Ways, you can get
losing
hurt.
more lives. Yeah.
That's right.
Let me go back to it even more. What was the result of that? Did they vote for it or against it? Or
No, man, it didn't even get a hearing.
Wow.
Maybe it got a hearing, but they're not concerned. The party that claims they're the party of life. Let me make sure you see my eye roll.
Yeah.
It's actually the party of birth. And not really too much care is given after the first breath is taken.
Spencer, like dealing with these issues and go because as you say, there is back and forth. Like, where do you see the common ground? Not just in that part. Like, we get where you guys are at on guns. Where do the Georgia Republicans and Democrats, where do they get along at, or where does the bipartisan kind of go?
Look, about 85-90% of the bills we pass are bipartisan bills. Okay. I don't want to make it look like your state government is not functioning or is functioning at the level of your federal government. There's a bit more congeniality. The way I operate is I don't like, and I say this in a lot of speeches, you can't not like people because they're different than you. You can't not like people because they were raised differently, they look differently. Because that's, number one, the most un-American thing I've ever heard of, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it's also what the majority of this country's faith says is wrong.
Right.
And so a lot of us have lost our way on that aspect as well. And that we do work together on a majority of items in the government.
Mm-hmm.
But there are divisive things.
Right. And so I did want to kind of talk about a couple of House bills that I guess Kemp vetoed recently, and I kind of want to get your opinion on them. One was House Bill 308, which would have allowed the implementation of intelligent speed limiting devices for reckless drivers. The bill was vetoed over the concerns that doesn't measure enough. It does not have measures to ensure this punishment would be consistently and effectively applied. The other one was House Bill 433, would have allowed the DHS to access more information about background checks, including info about cases where charges were dropped or dismissed. And feel free to interrupt me as I'm reading these. The Senate Bill 46 would have required every department, agency, and bureau in Georgia to create an agency service delivery official to quicken bureaucratic response times. Let's see. House Bill 532 would allow counties with large amounts of DNR owned land to draw on multiple grant programs to replace lost tax revenue. House Bill 380 would dissolve the Lower Chattahoochee Regional Airport Authority. It was vetoed at the request of their sponsor. Yeah. So those were just a couple of them, and I was just curious, Spencer, if anything stuck out to you, just, or if anything in healthcare stuck out, as far as just what people. I feel like the one thing about the data and people's past, even cases that might have been dropped or dismissed, how that might affect, citizens from getting a job or getting certain, healthcare, things like that. So
Yeah, that's right. And I don't remember the specifics of that legislation. And it's hard to get. I mean, we had like 3,000, maybe 4,000 bills filed, right, in 3 months.
Sheesh.
So I try to read them all, and I put my eyes on every word. But I don't know exactly what that bill does or did.
Okay.
Um, there is something I do want to point out about every department having to create a new position in order to be less bureaucratic. Is that ironic to anybody? Is that it's a bureaucratic answer to?
Right.
I mean, is expanding government to make sure government is efficient? What?
Right.
Come on, y'all. I'm about tired of this. Everybody knows that government can be more efficient. We can be more efficient. My businesses can be more efficient. Blah, 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 blah. You know, but just the irony that you want to expand government. I'd say the governor got that one pretty right. Expand government to make it more efficient? That doesn't sound efficient
Right.
to me. But there's a lot of that goes on. There's really what you call the disconnects between a stated belief and an action, which my father always called hypocrisy.
Right.
And I try my best to stay away from
I was about to say politicians, that those two words can go hand in hand. So it depends on who you ask. But
depends on who you ask. That's exactly right. But I would say this to the folks that are watching. You know, in the week after session, I got asked, you know, what do you look for in a leader? Because I have to select my own leader, right? We select the leadership of the Democratic caucus.
mm-hmm.
I listen. I follow other members depending on the issues. But two things. I said, listen, number one, I want my leaders to have compassion. And then number two, I want my leaders to have the ability to be empathetic to people's issues, even if they have not experienced those themselves.
Right.
And if they're not, they don't need to be leading. Period.
Well, I wanted to go a little bit into your Athens roots.
Yeah.
Recently, you told me about a project that you were working on, song that you made, and I kind of want you to kind of just fill them in. We might be able to give y'all a little teaser or something.
Yeah, let's see. I hadn't been playing a whole bunch, but yeah, no. I mean, we were doing a rehabilitation of a historic cemetery, and that historic cemetery is out in northwest Athens, out Jefferson Road, and it's the St. James Church. And when I'd raised some funds to replace their sign and to get some folks out there to be able to, we can't get tractors out on the grave, so all of it has to do handwork because you don't want to drive tractors and stuff like that. So we were meeting with the elders of the church, and there was this old man named Deacon Bush, and he told me these stories about him growing up in a community called Oconee Heights, which is out there, Jefferson Road, near where it's actually out Jefferson Road to the left as you turn down Whitehall.
Yeah.
But then it comes out off of Tallahassee. Okay?
Right.
So
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
all that land outside the bypass and in between those two roads were Black-owned farms. And as a community out there called Oconee Heights. Now, Deacon Bush told me when he was 10 years old these stories about this guy named Zenas Dias. And Zenas Dias is related to a couple of guys I know here in town. And we found his grave in the graveyard. Okay, and so I restored it and everything. And the stories he told me, like, Zenas was kind of the guy who oversaw the community, right? He was the leader of the community, and he would walk to town and interact with the whites that were living in the town, right? And so he got an idea that he was going to build a little convenience store, a shack out there in Oconee Heights, and he started putting odds and ends so we didn't have to go to town. And you can imagine in the 40s and 50s, the angst of a black person trying to walk into downtown Athens, Georgia is probably not going to be cool, right? So that didn't work out. And so Zenas partnered with some moonshiners.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started selling moonshine out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the revenuers showed up. And Deacon Bush said, man, I've never seen this in my life. It was a river of liquor flowing down the streets.
Mm.
And he said they broke all those bottles and poured out all that liquor, and they arrested Zenas. And we were all huddled up together, and Zenas looked up at us and goes, y'all go back about your business. I'll be back by noon.
Mm.
And he said, sure enough, he looked out there by noon, and there was Zenas Dias walking back from town.
Mm.
So imagine a dirt road all the way from Whitehall Road all the way to downtown Athens, right?
And they just came and got you.
Well, they came and got him, but then one of the ladies goes, well, how did Zenas get out of jail? And then one of the men in the group answered, well, that's because the sheriff was in on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was another story about Zenas going to town and getting confronted by this rambunctious fella. And he goes, and the fella goes to the sheriff and said, Zenas made me mad, and I'm going to go hang him. The sheriff said, well, you go up there, and they're waiting for you with a bunch of shotguns, and I ain't going to help you. And I can only imagine in that conversation that the sheriff knew that this guy was already a troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And probably with his business dealings with Zenas, knew that Zenas knew better than to make this guy mad.
Right.
And so Deacon Bush told me that they sent all the women and children down to Rabbit Eye, which was a little juke joint they had a little further in the woods down there towards Tallahassee. And then they went back up on the hill, and they moved the curtains out of the way, and they raised the sashes, and they were all waiting for those men to come from town.
Mm.
And those stories, I say this, I've said this before, that Athens has a rich history. But it's the history of the rich.
Right.
And I was so moved by those stories. And I'm an ex-rock and roller, play a lot of guitar, that I went home and I immediately wrote a song. I got halfway through it. I sent it to my songwriting partner and said, here, you got to finish this. And then 30 minutes later, I sat down and finished it myself. And I named it Rabbit Eye. And it's a song of Zenas Dias told through the eyes of 10-year-old Deacon Bush. Zenas made his living off of mules and not machines, selling odds and ends to us like soap and kerosene. He was picking cotton from the morning to the night, made a bunch of money, but he never saw a dime. Living down in Rabbit Eye, it sure don't mean a thing. Life is really short, but it seems so long to me. Waking in that morning time before the sun get up, get a little coffee and I just put it in my cup. I can find my shoes and I'm looking for my belt. My family's still asleep, they can't even help. I work until that sun goes down, sometimes it's late at night. Walking down that old dirt road, I found a lucky dime. I'm gonna get some sugar and maybe a little rye. We gonna have a party down in Rabbit Eye. Living down in Rabbit Eye, it sure don't mean a thing. Life is really short, but it seems so long to me. Zenas is that man I'm gonna be. And he's walking when the sun is in the sky, back to Rabbit Eye. Moonshine and whiskey on a Saturday morn. The chef liked to take a nip, but he wasn't alone. Take it to my grave I will, and Zenas whistle tune. Said I'll be back in Rabbit Eye before the noon. Said I'll be back in Rabbit Eye before the noon. We all went went to town one night, the moon was big and red. No one knows what happened, and this is what they said. And good old boy, KKK, he didn't even care. He just knocked that hood across his face and made the others stare. Zenas knew that he might have just crossed that line. We all thought to ourselves that Zenas run out of time. But fire flew from his eyes like a crossbun to the ground. Zenas turned his back and he just walked on out of town. Living down in Rabbit Isle, it sure don't mean a thing. Life is really short, but it seems so long to me. Zenas is that man I'm gonna be. And he's walking when the sun is in the sky. He's walking when the sun is in the sky. He's walking when the sun is in the sky. Back to Rabbit Eye.
Where do you plan to take it?
I want to record that and release it this year. I have a record that I started work on last year. My problem is that I write a lot of songs, and so like when I'm supposed to be practicing, you'd think that if you write a song, you automatically know how to play it really well, and that's not the case at all. You have to get good at it, right?
Right.
And so, and it'll morph over time. A little bit will change the style that you use to play. But thinking about how I'm working on this record, but then all of a sudden I'll play a couple of chords and it's a different song. So I keep writing new songs, and then what I need to do is sit down and practice these 11 songs that I have, and that's one of them. And my goal is to get that out this year, recorded with a group. On that specific song, I'm thinking about it'd be an interesting collaboration to have some kind of spoken word hip hop version.
Right.
That an intersection of a voice. So to me, the visual is extremely interesting because you have this southern white guy playing a song from the viewpoint that's written from the viewpoint of a 10-year-old black boy in the 40s and 50s talking about his idol, an older black man in the 40s and 50s. No telling what that guy went through.
Right.
And so I don't want to hog that. I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's not just my story, and I think that it would be great to get somebody who could do spoken word and interject their viewpoint.
Yeah.
Behind that rhythm.
Right. Yeah.
Because it does have a.
Yes.
You
got some rhythm in there.
It has you could bounce to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
And so. It is one of those things that I'm kicking around that specific. I've never done that before,
right?
And
but that's what new things are supposed to come from, in the sense that where rap is today, like they need that branching out of trying a different lane and actually developing themselves as artists. So I could see an artist, for example, Big X the Plug. He's a rapper out of Texas.
Okay,
he just did a big song. I think it might have been with what is the guy, Teddy Swims, or I think that's,
I don't really know.
Yeah. He I think he did some song, but it's a country hip hop mix,
right.
And it, I think that would be a great idea. And with Athens being a music town, why not?
Yeah, no, it'd be fun to do, and it'd be something outside of my comfort zone. You're exactly right, and that's not why I wouldn't do it. It's just a matter of finding the best. I'm picky about what I want to do,
Right,
I'm an artist, so I got a vision,
Yep.
And so, but I think the spoken word and rap scene in Athens, it was non-existent when I came here in the 80s. But what's so cool is that there are so many people doing that now, and
right.
the rise of the black musicians in Athens creating music has just been wonderful to see, and I love it. And you got I didn't even know who Quavo was until my son saw him at a football game.
Right,
and
right.
He's from Athens, and then you got who was he was a young guy at Cedar Shoals.
Fujiano.
Yes.
And then you have Petro.
I mean,
both of them, yeah.
I mean, there's so much talent
that have actually gone in the music industry and like sold millions of records or like gotten big audiences and yeah, that's what it's the same thing. When 10, 20 years ago, that's the thing. It's here. It's always been here. The Tony B's, the down south and down and Duddy. It's several guys that have came here and kind of tried to create the lane to where it is now. And I think I'm hoping that with where Athens is, we can kind of contribute because all we hear is like Atlanta.
No, that's right.
And we love it, but
sure. I mean, and it's about our local identity, and Athens is a great place. We're known for our music because we've had the opportunity for some big bands to pass through here, in both pop, rock, and rap. And it's a very creative town. There's a bunch of creative people here, and so guitar players are a dime a dozen. Everybody's like, "Oh, what do you do?" Like, I play guitar and sing, but I'm one of like a million. There's a million. Everyone here plays guitar. Yep. You play guitar. Yep. The interviewer plays guitar. That's his guitar, So it's like, okay, whatever.
Right. It's definitely something that connects us. I love my music.
Oh yeah.
7th grade playing Metallica, playing Bob Marley. Just having that different taste. I feel like I've always been able to connect. Jeff Snowden.
Yeah.
I was maybe in the 10th grade. We had a talent show at Athens Christian. I sat in front of the whole school and played Metallica with Jeff. Jeff and I played Metallica on guitar. So
what songs you play?
One. We played one by Metallica on guitar. So it was just, man, it connects us. But the thing that I liked about your song, and I think that what could push artists here, is the storytelling, the subject matter. You didn't just pull it like I feel several artists today will just pull from their imagination what they saw in Paid in Full in a movie, and it's like, well, how can you take something that's real, something that's from your community, and make it into art?
Yeah, no, and I think that's extremely important. I think what I said earlier off camera was, Athens has a rich history, but it's the history of the rich, and these stories have to be told. And and that's one of them. And what does Habitat for Humanity have to do with redoing a cemetery? Well, I'll tell you, it's because I consider that building community. And that community was here a long time before I was here, a long time Habitat was here, and they deserve every bit of respect from this community as anybody gets right now. And that stuff's important, that the history in this town is extremely important. But unfortunately, it's the winners of the history. The winners of the battle get to write the history books,
Mm-hmm.
So I just hope that that's some sort of way that I can contribute to the preservation of the memories of these great people that made this town.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate you, Representative Frye.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Executive Director. We hope to have him back again. This is just, as things progress with the legislation, hopefully Spencer can send us an email or hopefully we can work with him and kind of see what we can get you all in the loop on. So
absolutely. And so let me tell you, for the viewers, if you need to get in touch with me, you can email me at spencer.fry@house.ga.gov. And that's my state email address. You need to contact me, holler at me anytime. And chances are probably a lot of your people know how to find me anyway already. So
right.
Just reach out, and I'm here to help. And I don't know. We're working legislators. We don't know everything. I know construction. I know a little bit of music, but I don't necessarily know an issue that you may be having that's in your job or in your field of expertise. So y'all's job is to communicate to us what you need us to do. And that's really important. I try to get that message out everywhere because if you need something, man, just find me. I don't like to go. I tell all the lobbyists, don't take me out to dinner. I got to be with my kids and my wife. I said, if you need something, holler at me. We don't got to go get a steak.
Right.
And so I tell your people that, y'all need something, just find me. And if I can't help you, I'll help you find somebody that will.
All right. Well, thank you for coming by, Spencer.
All right. Appreciate it. Good seeing you, man.
Yes, sir.